I'm gonna go ahead and test it out here. Is my mic working here? We've been having a little bit of crazy rain that's been happening here. I just had the best intro and I missed it again. So all the power went out and it rebooted through, and then of course my microphone was not set to on because it defaults that some way. All right, so there we go. Boy, you know what? Let's just kind of go back and start from the beginning. I want to make sure real quick though, you guys can hear me right. If I can get someone in the chat to confirm that for me, because I don't want to actually mess this up. Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much, Logician. Thank you for joining along with the stream. So let's back up real quick. Thank you for joining Securing the Bag with Seth Underwood. Uh, as always, we have so much to talk about tonight and very little time to do so because the technological singularity is at hand. Okay, perfect. Thank you. The technological singularity is at hand, and the machine elves wait for no one. But you know what's even closer than the technological singularity is the 2019 rather, Democratic debates in the summer. We are now 8 days away from this event. 8 days. I cannot believe how fast it feels that this event is heading our way. It seems like there's almost a singular point in time that we're rapidly heading towards, as if pulled by some gravitational force that we have no control over the pace over, and the human construct of our perception of reality begins to break down. Time passes faster and faster, and the world begins to look a little bit more like it's straight out of a circus. That's right, we're going to be talking about technological singularity today, but more so than that, I'd like to just pause and do some quick business about the stream. I'd like to thank so very much my second patron. I have secured the patron. I really do appreciate my patrons now for helping out support the stream. I don't have the words to express my gratitude for you kind of deciding to chip in and help out my stream. As I've mentioned before, I would really prefer not to have advertisement involved with this show in any way or be beholden to any sort of third party influence, and I've mentioned before that if demonetization is a issue with censorship, then in many ways a universal basic income is freedom of speech. And let's just be frank, you guys are smart. I don't want to have to try and hypnotize you into believing that a dentist actually cares what kind of toothpaste that you use. I don't want to have to brainwash you into buying underwear from me, because let's just be frank, that's a little bit creepy. That's not what this stream's about. And you're a grown adult, you should know exactly where you can go to pick up undergarments from. The Yang Gang are smart individuals. You don't need to be hypnotized. We've got our gazes tilted upwards towards the stars, and the techno moth gliding around up there, spreading its crystalline wings with technological abundance glittering down upon us and showering us with wealth. But far, far below the radar are the advertising dark age gargoyles sitting on their lofty perches looking down at all of the unwashed masses. So, like I said, thank you again. If you enjoy what I'm doing, if you enjoy this stream, if you want to see it grow and help out, be sure that you're subscribed currently. Share this with other members of the Yang Gang. And if you've got it in you, if you have a spare coffee that you would like to buy me every month, feel free to check out my Patreon. Patreon. That's the word. English. We've got it. So, another thing that I had to think of is that I keep on talking about this vision that I have for a future economy. A lot of people like to come back when you talk about automation and say, well, automation's happened in the past, and where we see technological disruption, we see the creation of new work. And yeah, indeed, we do see new work coming along. One, I don't agree that it's a one-to-one job destruction to job creation ratio, but yes, but the work of the future is increasingly digital, and that applies for both individuals and mega corporations as well. If you think of the 5 biggest companies that exist right now, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google, FANG if you will, all of them use, well, one, to some degree, the collection and amassing of our data for their trillions in profit, but two, they peddle in bytes and digital services. They employ far less people than the titans of industry of our past. And so as such, it seems that the trend involving what work is, what work means, involves more ones and zeros, more characterizations of yourself on social media, work is increasingly digital, which means that value is increasingly digital. And the economy of the future, I think, as more and more automation occurs and more physical manual labor is just made redundant, seems to be a society in which we may be able to thrive off of having access to a disposable amount of income every month and giving here or there. Now, obviously, it's a little bit frustrating to have to go to every single service provider and have the message pop up on your screen, please give $1 here to make sure that we continue along. And that's why I think it's even more important for a universal basic income, because, you know, the New York Times, every single journalist at the very minimum will have $1,000 a month. It's no longer up to you to continue to support them, but you can do so if you so please. Pretty crazy ideas, pretty crazy concepts. We're going to be talking about that and quite a lot more. Real quick, just seeing some of the comments here. It is all a simulation. That's entirely true, but you're getting ahead of the ball game here. I can't even begin to explain that at the moment if we're describing the singularity. The singularity is a psychedelic notion, indeed, and it's so strange. You know, I was just listening to a Sam Harris podcast that he had with his wife, and she was discussing the idea of panpsychism, and she mentioned it's so difficult to talk about this because it's kind of way woo-woo and out there, but there are a lot of signs that seem to point to like this concept of a woo-woo notion or a psychedelic notion as actually like being true. I feel the same way with the technological singularity, and I want to spend some time actually delving a little bit further into it. And in doing so, I'm going to be opening up the Dividend Report live stream to talk about and to help assert my notion, my assertion that a universal basic income is needed because of technological abundance. So we're going to be going into some futuristic ideas now with every growing live stream. This will also make sure that I don't devolve into beating a dead horse, because while I am probably a Yang fanboy, I'm first and foremost a tech futurist and a universal basic income advocate. All right, so with all of the tech issues out of the way, we're going to continue onwards here. Let's see. You know, the name of the show tonight, we're going to be talking about Joe Biden. Joe Biden continues just to spiral downwards into a flaming heap of despair. He's one of those dark age gargoyles that I mentioned just a few moments ago. We're going to talk about exactly what he's up to. We're also going to talk about some polling numbers. We're going to talk about some interesting news from the futurist world about desalination and much more. Also, it appears that Disney is making some money-grabbing moves when it comes to the Avengers movie. We're going to talk about that as well. And it's some dirty tactics going on here. So again, thanks so much for joining along with us tonight. I hope you're doing well. Quick notion, like I did say, it is monsooning here, and I live in the South. You know, we're pretty primitive with our technology. Anytime there's a drop of rain, there's actually a good chance that the stream just cuts out. So if that's what happens, well, enjoy your time while you're here. That's all I can say. So real quick, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the singularity real quick. I was having a discussion with someone on Twitter today, and I found he had absolutely no idea what I was saying. So I want to go a little bit further and say, you know, there's different camps when it comes to the universal basic income of how to approach this topic of free money for everyone, quote unquote. That's not what it is. But how do you approach that conversation with someone? There's two camps. One would say there's really the moral argument to be given here, much more along the lines of like Occupy Wall Street, the inequality angle, the classic more left discussion that you would see. And then there's also the side to say this is absolutely needed because of automation. Now, the other side would say this is needed regardless of automation or not. But I've found that the automation angle is one that kind of unites us. Because if you think about it, it is a threat, if you will, that is not human. And I don't know, I believe it may have been President Nixon who said the only thing that's going to unite the American people is a alien threat, basically, an extraterrestrial, otherworldly, massive enemy that will allow the people of the world to put aside their differences, cultural, religious, and otherwise, and come together under a single banner to save humanity. And that's, of course, where you get a whole bunch of conspiracy theories that prop up and start talking about the fact that there are no aliens, but if there are, and you start to see a little bit more of it, that's probably because there is a new world order brimming to unleash itself. You know, every single year, yeah, I'm not saying that I believe this or not, but every single year there's at least one like reputable news source. I think just a couple weeks ago they came out and they were like these Air Force pilots found this UFO. It's flying at speeds that human, you know, pilots wouldn't be able to survive in, the kind of forces at play in this vehicle. And like I saw that and I was like, this is just so weird. Like this happens every single year. Every single year there is something that comes out where it's like, oh man, what is that? What is that? And then it's just dropped. But it, you know, it kind of seems like they're trying to get the conversation going in some way or another. But I digress. This isn't that type of live stream. I promise. I promise. Maybe it is. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out the tone of what's going on here. What was I talking about? UFOs and the threat of an extraterrestrial, extra human force. Essentially, I feel that robots are what could take that spot. You know, if you're saying, hey, you can build a wall, but that's not going to stop a robot from taking your job, it suddenly opens up the discussion a little bit more into the forces at play, and we're starting to get to the point where you can't get people fighting against each other at the bottom rungs. They're actually having to come up with solutions to these real problems. So I personally really like the automation angle, but because I'm coming from there, it's in my duty to back up that assertion. The onus is on me to explain that yes, in fact, technological abundance is here, and this is X reason why, or this is X reason why not. And so let's go ahead and just kind of go through really quick. Our piece of futurism for today has to do with solar desalination. And what this is it's a concept basically that, you know, 70% of our Earth is water. But the issue is that not all of that water is drinkable. In fact, most of that water is completely undrinkable to humans. In case you weren't aware of that, you can't drink water out of the sea. And so there is a very real concern that with the growing population of humanity, there's going to be less access to water. And especially if you're in the climate change camp, that's a bigger concern as more and more of it is going to be required as droughts and things of that nature continue to ramp up. So the thing is how do we solve this problem? I'm not a fatalist and I'm not a collapsist. I don't believe in collapse. I believe it's a possibility, but at heart I'm a techno-optimist, and the answer to this problem is desalination. So what this is basically the reason why you can't drink water out of the sea is that a large portion of the makeup of that water is salt, and the more salt you drink, the more water is absorbed into. Oh God, I took biology so long ago. But basically it's not going to work out for you very well because that salt's absorbing all of the water. And how does that work exactly? Someone much smarter than me in the comments needs to help me out here. But the point of this is we've got to get the salt out of the water in order for it to become potable and easily drinked by the masses. So what you'd like to do is basically the best way of doing it is having evaporation occur. And the water will raise up into, condensation, basically. The ways that this happens, the mechanics of it has been worked on previously in the years and such. Basically the same concept as rain. English words. The issue with this is that it takes a pretty massive amount of energy to make this process go along smoothly, and energy is an issue overall. The math just doesn't quite add up with our current technology. So everyone's kind of been holding their breath in the futurist world as to when can we get this to become a reality. And of course, the answer seems to lie in renewable energy, because renewable energy is kind of abundance, especially if you're using the sun, hence solar desalination. If we could find a way of effectively harvesting the sun's energy, it would go farther than any other energy technology that humanity's come up with in general. In fact, one of the requirements, as noted by many futurists, to become a type 2 civilization is the full harnessing of the energy of the sun. Because if you think about it, less than 1% of what that ball of gas in the sky is emitting outwards into the universe is being shown onto the Earth. I'm getting too far ahead of myself here. Solar desalination. So, what news we have today is that there seems to have been a breakthrough by these genius engineers, these glittering technomoth engineers, these, I believe, incarnations of the machine elves sent from another dimension to help us all progress into the future. Very smart people. I wonder if they're in the Yang Gang. Engineers boost output of solar desalination system by 50%. Rice University's solar power approach for purifying salt water with sunlight and nanoparticles is even more efficient than its creators first believed. Researchers in Rice's laboratory for nanophotonics this week showed that they could boost the efficiency of their solar-powered desalination system by more than 50% by simply adding inexpensive plastic lenses to concentrate sunlight into hotspots. The results are available online in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The typical way to boost performance in solar-driven systems is to add solar concentrators and bring in more light, said Pratishka Dongari, a difficult name right there, a graduate student in applied physics in Rice's Brown School of Engineering and co-lead author of the paper. The big difference here is that we're using the same amount of light. We've shown it's possible to inexpensively redistribute that power and dramatically increase the rate of purified water production. So, as with most technology, even as Moore's law continues to break down with chips and transistor sizes, all it can sometimes take is just one thing that you're able to come through, and suddenly efficiency goes skyrocketing through the roof. And here it appears that we may be onto something with solar desalination. So it's conventional membrane distillation. Hot, salty water is flowed across one side of a sheet-like membrane while cool, filtered water flows across the other. The temperature difference creates a difference in vapor pressure that drives water vapor from the heated side of the membrane towards the cooler, low-pressure side. Scaling up the technology is difficult because the temperature difference across the membrane and the resulting output of clean water decreases as the size of membrane increases. Rice's nanophotonics-enabled solar membrane distillation, or NESMNA, technology addresses this by using light-absorbing nanoparticles to turn the membrane itself into a solar-driven heating element. So that is a whole bunch of woo-woo kind of techno speak right there, but basically what it's getting down to is the idea that concentrating energy on a single spot of a membrane is much better than just heating it all up at once, and that's because of thermodynamics and physics and things that I'm not qualified to speak about. But I am qualified to speak about the ramifications that such technology would have. Right? The entire point and the entire angle to the universal basic income movement in general is that we're continuing to see rapid pace of technological progress and like an overall ability to solve the world's issues, and in doing so create abundance. Now, the issue of course here is that humans just aren't wired to understand abundance. There's never really been abundance in our immediate environment, and so it's our duty to continue to point out where that abundance is and coming from. And so if you think about it, we can go through and desalinate basically, if we can get this science down, this has ramifications far more than just potable water, potable drinking water, and agricultural water. We could effectively begin to do large-scale terraforming in areas like the Saharan Desert, or if not terraforming the Sahara Desert, using the massive amount of space there where sunlight is mostly concentrated to harness solar energy to use as the energy source for solar desalination. So the problems of the overall like macro populations of the world can be fixed. We are an intelligent species, and our best ability, in fact, the thing that has put us at the top of the food chain, is our ability to adapt. And, I think what we really need in our government are more politicians to point this out. All you're ever going to hear about when you turn on the news or go here or go that are these dark age gargoyles perched up on their ledges with grimaces, looking down upon the unwashed masses and telling them that the world is about to end. And sure, there's always the threat of that, right? We all know that, and we need to get off of this rock and say our farewells at some point if we are going to become a Type 2 civilization, but we can do it. and we have to continue to progress. And one of the things of mental health awareness that I like to try and bring up to people are the facts that half of what it means to be a happy individual on this planet is a sense of agency, is a sense that you can progress forward, that you can, move from one environment that you're in into another environment. And what we need to start talking about is the ways that we can expand that idea, that frame of mind, into a society. Because the more that we're able to shoot towards the stars, the happier people are going to be overall. We have to stop talking about gloom and doom. Sometimes I wonder what it was like to be born before the moon landing, and to, as a people, to be thinking, wow, we're gonna do this. We're actually going to go to the moon, right? Like these days, obviously, we know we went to the moon and everything like that. I don't know. we're not going to talk about conspiracy theories and everything like that, because even outside of that discussion, we know that we could do that. But what was that transition like? The frame of mind from pre-moon landing to post-moon landing, and how that lifted people up. We need that again in a powerful way. That's my stance. I'd like to see so much more of that. I think Yang's how we get there. But real quick, we've had some tech issues. I'm going to take a look through the comments here and make sure that I am still coming through to you guys loud and clear. Salinization. Was I saying it wrong? I have a certain accent. Like I said, I'm from the South. Hey Alyssa, thank you so much for joining the stream. Hey Spider-Mang. Hey Roland the Paladin. I was a paladin myself back in high school playing World of Warcraft. I was actually a holy paladin, and I was one of the best on my server. I mean, it was a really small server, but if you needed to get through Icecrown Citadel, I was the one to call on. Excess sodium affects the ion balance in the bloodstream, which changes how muscles contract. Thank you. I knew it. I knew, like I said, the Yang Gang is an incredibly intelligent group of people. So that's what I was thinking, is it would affect your bloodstream in some way. Roland the Paladin, I didn't know that. Thanks. Doesn't it do something with like your actual red blood cells? It causes them to explode in some way, or that may be a complete over exaggeration. I'm not too sure. Sodium, magnesium, and calcium are all crucial for loads of biological functions, from muscle contractions to neuron firing. All right, anything that can get my neurons firing a little bit more, I will take. Hooray, Australia might not dry into a withered sultana. Oh, are you Australian? If so, I'm really sorry. I am so sorry. But yes, no, there may be hope. The problem is could we get your government to do something else? Wow. I mean, this is coming from an American, so it's bad. Ooh-wee. All right, I'm glad to see that the stream is still going on strong here. Every presidential candidate should go on Joe Rogan and eat psilocybin mushrooms. You know what? Honestly, yeah, like I said, I don't necessarily want to tell people that this is something that they should do. These substances will find their way into your lives. You don't have to go searching for them. But I do also, on the same hand, agree that it needs to be some kind of a requirement, if you're going to be the leader of the free world, to be in tune with the doors of perception, if you will. All right, very good, very good. So we've had our discussion on futurism and the fact that the technological singularity is near. That idea that I was having, though, it does kind of feel that time is moving faster and faster. And, some people talk about the fact that this is just due to getting older. As you're younger, you've got, less memories and less experience of time. So time experience feels longer overall. But there's also a notion that part of the reason why it feels that things are speeding up is because we are heading to this point in time, and that it affects much more than just the technological, tangible nature of resistor chips and this and that, but it actually goes forward into the dimension of time as well and sucks everything towards it, which is kind of a really weird and probably terrifying concept, but I'm an optimist about the situation overall. Seth, your voice is the same way. It's the same as I like my chicken. Extra crispy. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I've been told for a while that I should do radio and things of that nature, but again, something about, just selling people nonsense. I thought there's a better way to do it. And so then I made the Dividend Report, and here we are. All right, but enough about me. Let's keep going here because we want to talk about the really interesting things, and that's Avengers Endgame. Because Avengers Endgame is on its way to becoming the number one top selling, gross selling movie of all time. But the way that they're trying to become the top gross selling movie is in itself kind of gross. News today says that there is going to be a re release in theaters of Avatar. I'm sorry, Avengers Endgame trying to beat Avatar, the movie, 2009 that was made, to take the crown, the top achievement of most selling in box office. The issue is that they're saying that as they're re-releasing it, they're bringing more footage, more unseen content from the first release. The issue is with this is that apparently it's just a end credit scene. The first release did not have one. So it seems very disingenuous to say that there is a massive amount of new, or not even massive, but new footage that's never before been seen. But what this is that this is okay, apparently people are saying, well, Avatar did this too, which personally I don't care because I'm not going to try and defend this nonsense race between two trying to get to the top, because overall what we're going to see is this may become a theme. Obviously, I am very deeply rooted in the video game industry, and so I'm coming with warning to anyone who enjoys the box office that what you'll see is when they see that they can make more money by doing this thing or that thing, they're going to do it. In case you don't know about loot boxes, if you have a child, you should know about loot boxes, but basically virtual and digital crack is being sold to children and adults like myself in the form of saying, hey, after you buy this product, you can go through and spend a little bit more and you'll get continued use, continued new things. And, in this way, it's also almost like a lottery or like a casino system where you spend 99 cents, you're going to get a nice, cool piece of loot that looks interesting. It doesn't affect your ability to play because that's a big no-no. The discussion's already been had. But the problem is that they're like coding in all these shiny and interesting things that gets the dopamine reactors in your brain setting off every time that you open these loot boxes. And this is part of what Yang says when he says we shouldn't have the top minds of our country heading over to Silicon Valley to find out algorithms to get people to click on things or to buy things, right? The moral consequences of this are abundant. So the same kind of thing is applying to this shenanigans that Disney, the big mouse, the monolithic creature hanging up on those ledges near the Dark Age gargoyles. I don't necessarily think that gargoyle's the right word for Disney, but they're something else. They're an entire different creature altogether. They're up there and they're trying to find ways of getting you back into the box office, and this is the first play. Next thing you know, I don't know, like what can we expect from the theater industry next? Because as we know, they're starting to crumble outside of the big hitting box office hits. It's been my assertion for a long time now that virtual reality is going to come through and completely displace not only the big screen, flat screen TV industry, but also the movie theater industry itself. I've got an Oculus Rift, and the thing that I spend the most time in it doing is actually sitting in a virtual movie theater watching Netflix or actually working on the Dividend Report. It's very cool because you can pull up your documents and everything. You have your own virtual desktop within this headset. So I think it's going to replace monitors, but it's also going to largely replace the experience of the theater. Okay, well, I don't know. Part of the theater is kind of the environment. Part of it's the boom of the amazing sound systems. But in terms of scale, it's very, very cool in virtual reality. Again, I had a podcast on virtual reality. In case you are interested in that discussion, be sure and check out Building the Oasis on the podcast service site of your choice. Actually, I think it's just Google Play and Apple iTunes. So one of those two, if those are your choices. So, again, this seems so shady on the behalf of Disney to go through. They're obviously doing it because they want to boost these numbers to get to the finish line, to have Avengers Endgame as the most successful. Has Gone with the Wind been toppled yet? Top grossing, because everyone's been saying Avatar, but I don't think that Gone with the Wind has been toppled. Grossing movies. Oh wow, it was. Wait. Are we adjusting for inflation or something though? Gone with the Wind. Where's Gone with the Wind? All right. Well, you know what? Frankly, I don't really give a damn. So let's just kind of keep on moving. You know, I have said before that I am a lover of the free market, but this is just shady. There is still this creepy, slimy type of behavior that we see from these industries, and I don't like it. I don't like it if you ask me. And they're free to do whatever they want, I suppose. Boy, boy. I talked about my uncomfortable feelings for Facebook in the last episode. Well, now it's Disney. I think Titanic took on with the Wind's throne adjusting for inflation. Man, I am really behind on box office news then, because for some reason I thought it was still up there. E.T. was re-released like 4 times. I might be exaggerating, but it was re-released. Okay, so maybe this isn't a new thing. Yep, just like many video games. That's where I'm coming from with this. It feels like, you know, that type of post-product monetization model is infecting its way through other areas and other industries, right? I think so much about this scandal with Apple and how, I don't know, it doesn't seem to be talked about much anymore, but there was like, when the software updates go through, your battery life decreases, and Apple's defending themselves saying, well, the tech in general is getting older, and we do this to improve its quality of life over time. It sounds like PR nonsense if you ask me. But, you know, for the first time in the history of consumerism, we've got products that we purchase and then after the fact can be inherently changed, right? I talk about how software is a new paradigm from hardware, and the same goes for the fact that these phones will change over the course of their life that they're there with you. So just another example of how our consumer protection industry is just not keeping up with the pace of technology. And I honestly think even if we get the most forward-thinking legislators in office, it's still going to go too fast for us to be able to keep up with it. You know, at this point, we are almost just at the whims of the technological singularity, and we're riding this wave all the way to the circus, baby. Again, I'm an optimist, though. I think the more that we're able to decentralize these types of technologies, and the closer that we get to a true sentient artificial intelligence that looks at us like children and loves us because it's benevolent and loves us because we made it and it's, you know, made in our image, that hopefully it'll take care of us. It'll cradle us in the arms of the techno moth with its crystalline wings. Because I can't afford to think otherwise. I don't want to be a cynical, you know, jaded person. I'm kind of worried though that if I don't, maybe the dividend report will never go off because of course, you know, people only follow along for doom and gloom. It's not going to be doom and gloom, guys. It's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. When we're talking about mental health too, the thing that makes mental health so important is that you can reach this state of like you need a voice in your head that just says, "Hey, it's okay. It's okay." And that's so hard to get to because you know, these days with social media and everything like that, you're constantly bombarded by it is not okay. And in fact, I found myself today just going through a absolute terrible Twitter hole um, and constantly tweeting. I've gotten quite a few more followers on Twitter. I was worried that I might lose some of them because they would take a look at what I was doing. And well, first of all, there's this very interesting tweet. We're going to tie things back to Yang for just a quick second. We've got some MSNBC polls. Oh my God, they put Andrew Yang on a graphic. Oh boy, I'm so happy. Look, they found him. They found the Asian man. I'm so happy to see that they are now aware of the Yang Gang. So here are some polling numbers for us as shown by MSNBC. We've got Biden at 32%. I'm sorry. Support for Democratic nomination now and in May. Okay, so first number is the numbers now. Second number is the numbers in May. So Biden, 32% from 33%. Warren, 15%, up from 10%. That's incredible. Way to go, Warren. 14% for Sanders, up to 15%. They're taking him down. Oh my gosh. The status quo Joe, he's getting a run for it, and we're going to talk about that. 8% Harris, up to 11%. 5% Buttigieg, up to 6%. Beto O'Rourke, 3% up to 4%. Cory Booker, 2% to 1%, tied with Yang at 2% to 1%. This poll is a recognized poll that they'll need for the DNC debates. The requirements on that were 2%. Yang's already made it. We're already making waves. We're going to be in the fall debates, no questions about it. Just great news. Klobuchar, 1% down from 3%. Oh, to be a fly on the wall in Klobuchar's office. If, in case you didn't know, Klobuchar was in the news at her campaign announcement because apparently she's known to throw temper tantrums around her subordinates in a very, very intimidating, borderline violent way. Apparently she throws binders around and things of that nature and has a fit. So, I'm saying we need to rally together as the Yang Gang to make sure that her poor interns get some financial security. That's the thing that I don't understand. If you're working for these other campaigns and you're being treated like this, if you're an unpaid intern, you got to go over to Yang's campaign, right? This is the first campaign in the history of politics where you're going to get compensated for every month for the rest of your life if you help get this guy in office. That is completely different. So de Blasio, 1%, he's staying the same at 1%, and that's the same for Gabbard, Inslee, and Williamson. So very interesting poll numbers. We continue to improve. We're continuing to head towards those stars. The Yang Gang train is here. It ain't stopping anytime soon. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this Twitter storm that I got kind of wrapped into today, because I decided to make a claim to fame on a tweet that Bernie Sanders made. What I noticed was that I got a lot more positive feedback from this, because sometimes I'm mad at Bernie. To be honest, he hurt me. He hurt me bad when he went back on his words on universal basic income, because I am a UBI advocate. It means so much to me, this movement in general. And so when I talk to Bernie and when I bring him up online, that hurt can sometimes come through, and his supporters obviously see it. So this had a very different reaction. It's gone right now at 76 likes. I'm enjoying the the movement on my phone and everything. But this is what he tweeted out. This is what I responded with. In 2017, 4 of the Waltons made $12.7 billion in a single day. To make that much, it would take a Walmart worker working full-time, earning $11 an hour over 653,000 years. This greed has got to end. And I really do love the discussion about like how absolutely whacked our inequality has gotten. And like my favorite statistic about this is actually that if you were to take the money that Jeff Bezos, the Bezos man, makes in a minute based upon, I don't think just inflation of what he's accruing over time, but this is like if you were to have to think about it in a long-term way. I need to make sure I've got those numbers right. He makes $160,000 per second. He makes 4 times the average American salary every 60 seconds. You gotta wrap your head around that because one, that's an image of the overall technological abundance we live in. If you can get to like a trillion number in overall GDP, which was achieved a long time ago, you gotta understand that things have gotten far out of comprehension. This is an issue, again, I talk about how the human brain has not been correctly wired to think about exponential paces and things of that nature, but at the same time, we're not wired to understand numbers beyond about 100. There's a term for a number of the most amount of faces that we can remember, the most bandwidth that we have when it comes to social circles, and I believe it's around 100 people, 120, maybe 150. But like after that, you start to enter into abstract thinking, right? So you can correctly think about 10 apples. You can think about 100 apples. You might be able to see them on a table in your mind's eye and see those apples in the number that they are there. But at a certain point, you get to 200, you get to 500 apples. What your brain starts to do is it moves over into this abstract line of thinking, which is this is just a lot. That's a lot of apples. I imagine it looks like a pile of apples. It might start to look like a pyramid of apples. And when you get to 1,000, well, this kind of thinking becomes more and more pronounced, right? So the difference between 100, like 10 to 100, you can very easily see that difference. But by the time that you get to the difference of 1,000 to 10,000, your brain's pretty much reached the point of, that's a lot. Now, that's an issue. That is a huge issue. This is what I like to call a psychological blind spot that's perpetuating our inequality. Because we're not just talking about 1,000 or 10,000 now. We're talking about 160,000 every 60 seconds. We're talking about $151 billion in net worth, which I believe has changed after his divorce. And congratulations to Mackenzie Bezos for becoming the world's most valuable woman basically overnight, which is just horrendous. I'm sorry. Oh, it's weird. Like, that's weird. It's very weird. So, like, our inability to grasp these numbers is a huge problem. And I feel like it needs to be talked about a little bit more. Because whether you're on the left or the right, I mean, no one needs to argue that if Bezos was $50 billion less rich, no one should care. No one should care if his net worth was at $3 billion. Like, I say, let's give him $3 billion. $3 billion's enough. You'll never have to work a day in your life. Your children will never have to work in a day in life. 30 generations from now, your great on and on grandkids will never have to work a day in their life, right? Inequality needs to be addressed. I commend Bernie's tweet for this overall, but at the same time, I still hold back on my assertion that a universal basic income is more important than addressing, like, inequality in the form of wealth taxes. I feel like we're going to get there, but we need to end poverty as soon as possible in any way we can. So really quick, I'm just going to take a look at the comments here. I'm about 10 movies behind at this point from Endgame. You got to get on it. Honestly, it's a satisfying finish to the series, I'll admit. Yeah, very true. Seth likes the truth. It's good. I love the truth. I do need to take a breath too. I can get very passionate. I absolutely can. Oh, hey, thank you for all of those words. I really do appreciate that kind of feedback. I really do. Someone said something about getting me as Andrew Yang's communications director. No. What was Sarah Huckabee Sanders? Rest in peace, Sarah. Where is she at now? Communication. Is it communications director? No. I'm blanking on this, but someone said that, and I say, hell yeah, that's a dream job. Unfortunately, I'm afraid anyone's going to go to my my Twitter history, and I don't know. Like, I don't know what I would look like in the public light. Anyways, I'm getting a really big head right now. Let me go over, and we're back to the Bernie Sanders tweet here. Let's see what I responded with. I say, on top of this, Walmart is subsidized by taxpayers obsessed with making sure people are employed and productive. So obsessed that they spend $6 billion a year to provide food stamps so that Walmart can double dip from the cookie jar. With this absurd wealth, Walmart is automating its jobs. And I go a little bit further to say, oh man, I can't even find it here. Twitter's format on the desktop's a little wacky. I say we need to be able to solve the problems of the future and end corporate welfare while also protecting workers against financial insecurity caused by exponential technology displacing and creating abundant wealth by using all of our data. We need a data dividend. So, I made sure not to mention Yang in these tweets, and I did find overall that the reception was much more critical. I would recommend from now on, if you're going to be engaging with the Bernie crowd, just kind of bring up the facts of a universal basic income, because a lot of them still don't know about it, and I found that out myself here. So, but the overall issue here, I do want to bring up, the world's weird. It's getting weirder every day. And Tucker Carlson has actually brought this up himself. Tucker Carlson, the gargoyle, dark age gargoyle of Fox News. But in many ways, he's not. He's kind of an interesting fellow, because he's like anti-corruption in business in a way that really can come across in a leftist way. He says things all the time where you go, Tucker, what? Right? Like, he points out the problems, and then you go, how are you on Fox News? How did you just say that? And how didn't your audience go absolutely wild? For instance, what I'm referring to is this clip of him coming through and talking about the fact that Walmart, that billionaire heiresses are benefiting from the fact that they don't pay their workers enough, that the taxpayers coming through and paying for food stamps that these workers need because they're not being paid enough to live, they're not being paid enough to eat, and then those workers are using those food stamps at Walmart. So it's not just once, it's like twice, double the subsidies. We're paying their payroll and we're paying their bottom line. I brought this up, and you don't know how many people like on the right are coming to me and saying, no one's forced to work at Walmart. And like, this is the issue is, yeah, you kind of are. If you don't work for Walmart, you're going to be homeless, right? If Walmart's your choice for jobs in this market, you've got to work for Walmart. You have to take those benefits. And in fact, there's some benefits where you have to kind of like continue to try and prove yourself as being employable in many ways. This is the shortcomings of the social welfare and safety net that we currently have in place that I love to rail on so much. So this is a big problem, and this is one that I'm bringing up as to why the universal basic income is truly needed. And I've told these people who come back to me and say, oh, you're not forced to work at Walmart. I'm saying I actually agree with this sentiment. You should have the freedom to reject poverty wages, but you don't right now, and it's disingenuous to say that you do. But with a universal basic income, if you've got the ability to at least have your basic needs taken care of, this is more of a reason why it should be more than $1,000. We'll get there though. Then you can come to the negotiation table between employer and employee with an actual equal footing. To try and say that it's an equal footing between the employer and the employee now is just disingenuous. But it actually would be a lot more fair if you weren't having to do that job to survive. You would actually have more bargaining power to demand your worth. And to the degree that people will come through and say, well, people will sit on their ass all day if they have a universal basic income, in a way, I kind of want that to happen. I don't think that anyone should work for such terribly low wages. And so this is what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was referring to in her pre-draft of the Green New Deal when she put in the verbiage, unwilling to work. Unwilling to work is actually a deeply libertarian idea and a phrase in that you have the ability to choose where your labor is spent and where it goes. That is a constant of the free market and the capitalistic society that we live in. Although if we think about it long enough, it doesn't quite add up to that point, but we can get there and we can actually improve the system of its flaws. So, and this is the overarching issue, and man, I had a lot of conversations with people today. I kind of spiraled out of control a bit. I do that every now and then. So learn from my mistakes, go outside, spend 10 minutes in nature, try and reduce the amount of blue light. Blue artificial LED light is a huge contributor to mental stress. This has actually been scientifically proven. You want to bask yourself in natural green light. Green is actually the most based color on the color spectrum. It is the best color all around, and this is scientifically proven. So take 10 minutes out of your day, just take it all in, be grateful, find something that you're grateful for. I am grateful for, oh man, I'm grateful for so much. I'm definitely grateful for my patrons. Thank you. Let's go ahead and just take a look at some of these comments here. Jimmy Dore don't like Yang, which is a great shame because I like them both. That's some of that southern slang coming through in there. That's very natural to me. And yeah, you know, from what I saw from the interview, I'm thinking that him and Yang, they can come back together. I hope they could come back together. All of these kind of discussions are that I've been bringing up in the past 5 minutes is the type of thing that I wish I could go through and talk to Jimmy Dore about, because it seems to be what he completely missed. And I feel like he should be a much bigger proponent of universal basic income. Yang's been debating as a sport. Yeah, I remember seeing the tweet that he pointed out that he was in a debate championship and he knows what he's doing, but that's still, I'm still so nervous for the upcoming debates. I've got faith in him though. All right. Politics is wrestling. There's a lot of strategy that I kind of thought, that I kind of left to the wayside. I forgot how brutal and how strategic you've got to go about politics, but I feel that Yang and his campaign are doing a much better job than I initially realized. All right, let me see here. So we've gone through the Twitter storm, and I'm gonna leave that there. Let's let sleeping giants lie. Giants I think that's the thing. All right, we're going to wrap the episode up by talking about the main meat and potatoes of the episode, and that was Status Quo Joe. You know, there's been Sleepy Joe, there's been Creepy Joe, there's been Uncle Joe, Creepy Uncle Joe, Sleepy Uncle Joe, but these feel like they're coming from, I don't know, some certain real estate mogul. It's like, you know, this verbiage has been done before. I'm much more in favor of Status Quo Joe, and that's where I'm going to be going from here. What is Status Quo Joe up to today? Because 8 days from now, we're going to see him front and center. What should we be expecting from him? Well, the Dark Age gargoyle himself, probably the Gargoyle King up on the tower, is looking down at a dumpster fire that he is heading very quickly towards. It turns out that Joe Biden has a very big problem with raves. And if you've got a problem with raves, then you're clearly not on the same page as the singularitarians. Let's go ahead and just take a quick listen to this short audio clip from Status Quo Joe, here we go.
I would be passing new ordinances relating to stiff criminal penalties for anyone who held a rave. The promoter, the guy who owned the building. I would put the son of a gun in jail. I would change the law. There's no doubt about where these raves are. In the middle of the desert. Arrest the promoter. Find a rationale unrelated to drugs. Keeping an unsafe, for example, I'm the guy who authored the crack house legislation. We can use the crack house legislation to tear down these buildings.
Unrelated to drugs. Whoa. That's pretty crazy. He's going through and saying, we don't even have to attack this from a drug angle. These damn ravers, they've got to go out there in the desert. This is insane. They're like, okay, so we're starting to see the shaping up of Status Quo Joe's platform, and so far we've got curing cancer. Big news there. Wow, way to go. Ending raves. All right. Yeah, now we're getting the people going. This is what the people want in 2020. This is fantastic. You know, there's also more news where he's come out and told his donors up front with reporters around, nothing's going to change with me in office. The status quo remains. And he's basically saying, you know, the standard of living that you are accustomed to, he's saying this to people who are extremely wealthy with the money to give, nothing's going to change. Trust in me. We're going to get you back to where you were before all this scary talk about wealth redistribution and political reform and finance reform. Don't you worry about it, my friends. Trust in me, and the promised land awaits. He is a Dark Age gargoyle. He is a creepy, slimy person, and I get more and more frustrated every day that I see him above 30% in the polls, and I'm hoping to see soon that he just plummets, and that's going to happen at the debates. It's going to happen at the debates. I'm putting my foot down now, and I'm firmly stating this. Oh boy. All right, take it in. Just take it in, deep breaths, and relax. So I think that's going to just about do it for tonight's episode. We all need to take a little bit of a sabbatical and unwind a bit. Do take my wisdom at hand. Spend 10 minutes. Think of something you're grateful about. Go outside and look at something green and be grateful for green. It really will transform your lives in important ways. Thank you for joining me here on Securing the Bag. If you're liking this stream, make sure that you are subscribed, that you share this with other members of the Yang Gang. And if you feel so inclined, if you've got some coffee money or something like that that you'd feel free to give to me, head on over to my Patreon account. I would greatly appreciate it, and you'll help make my vision a reality. Guys, thank you so much for joining the Securing the Bag live stream. Take it easy. Have a good night. I'll be back tomorrow night at 7 to continue the discussion. I'm signing off. Thanks, guys.